My name is Martin. I'm from a company called Wirex, and I know many of the people here, especially at midday, are probably going to be committed Nano fans or people from the community. And my experience to people that are Nano fans is they do not suffer fools gladly, and they don't like to be mansplained or shield a product. So I'm not going to talk too much about Wirex for the first few minutes. I will talk about it and just explain for anyone that doesn't know it in a few moments. But I think the title that I agreed with George today was, rather than just talk at you for 20 minutes about Wirex and how we're great and how you should download it, which of course you should, and you can talk to Lottie over there and get some free merch whenever you want, but actually taking a step back and talking a little bit more about digital payments and why there was an opportunity. And this is something that is sincerely close to my heart, not from a pure crypto angle, but even prior to that. So in 2016, I started working for a company called WorldRemit. I don't know if any of you have heard of WorldRemit. It's a Fintech app that allows you to send money in fiat currency from country A to country B. Nowadays, that's not that clever. It doesn't seem that radical. But back in 2014 or so, when it started, that's something that was really interesting and different. But what's quite special about WorldRemit was who the founder was and what his mission was. So it's a guy called Ismail Ahmed, and he was a Somalilander refugee. And what happened to Ismail Ahmed was he was fired from the United Nations because he was a whistleblower for corruption. So he was working for the UN, and he found that there was all this systemic corruption that was happening in money going back into Somaliland. And so he reported the corrupt people at the UN. And so the UN Ethics Committee looked into it and fired Ismail Ahmed. Which is, I guess, what you do when you're in a big international organization. Don't talk about the corruption, guys. So he then sued the UN, and he managed to get a payout. And with that payout, he actually created his remittance company, which is called WorldRemit. And a couple of really interesting stories around that is why he talks about he chose to use his money in this way is he was actually at the time somewhere like in Peterborough, I think it was, picking fruit. And at that time in the late noughties of this century, he used to have to get a train into London to a specific shop to send money back to Somaliland, because Somaliland, if any of you don't know, it's kind of not recognized internationally. It's a sort of self-declared independent part of Somalia. So they don't have a central bank, and if you want to send money there, it's really, really difficult. And he was paying door to door, let's say, from Peterborough all the way to his family in Somaliland, maybe losing 20% of the money. So it's just an outrageous, almost theft, you could say, or certainly an exploitation of his work, his limited money. And that's not such an unusual thing. Even if you look at some of the big global remittance companies, going back to the late noughties, it was quite normal if you sent money with MoneyGram or with Western Union and others to perhaps lose up to 18% of your money by the time it's gone all the way from you in America, Canada, London, and then it's gone to your family in Ghana or Nigeria or Kenya, wherever it might be. So that was a premise for his business. And some of the interesting developments that now also might seem dated in some ways, but actually in other ways are still further ahead than the UK, is the idea of electric money. Or today we're talking digital currencies, but here we were talking at WorldRemit, we were talking about sending money, for example, to Kenya or to Ghana or to Nigeria or Zimbabwe, and that money being converted instantly from GBP, from your payment card, from a debit card or something, sent via WorldRemit in seconds, and then being collected in mobile money onto your SIM card in any of those countries, and then immediately being able to spend. Now, there are a few benefits of that. I know, for example, Colin this morning, who was speaking about the idea of completely fee-free transactions. WorldRemit wasn't fee-free, but it was several times cheaper than the competitors at that time when it launched, and that was a big difference. But some of the other things that were important was this idea of empowerment. And in a Western sense, we talk about empowerment in very glib terms, like it's normally about angry about something on Twitter or, I don't know, toilets and genders and stuff like that. But actually empowerment in a developing world perspective can actually mean that instead of the money going to the man, it could be an uncle or something that used to bring the money into Nigeria and then share it out after he's taken his own cut. It could be sent directly, for example, to the woman that was paying for the medical fees, the school fees for her children, and so on. So actually, it wasn't just the loss of commission that was a benefit, but it was also the fact that money would go directly to the hands of the people that needed it, to those family members, rather than going through 2 or 3 other family members, often men, who would also then take their share of that. And actually, the woman would end up with a very, very small amount, or they weren't empowered to make the decisions themselves on how to spend the remittance. So that's where it came from. And I was working in World Remit for that time. I thought it was a fantastic company, not just because of what it was trying to do at the time, but also because it demonstrated there was a tangible benefit. There's a lot of fintech companies these days. If we're being honest, they have a great mission statement, but they haven't necessarily found the true product market fit. They haven't necessarily found a real way to help people that need it. And what World Remit did was, it was a capitalist company. It was profit making, or that was the aim. It was making a net revenue for itself. But at the time, it was still several times cheaper than any other alternative. So it was a mutual benefit, and it was a good example of capitalism that works rather than capitalism that perhaps had exploited in the past with Western Union and MoneyGram and others. So that's where I started that journey, and I think it was a really nice eye-opener for me in the idea of the possibilities of doing electronic transactions of some form for the benefit of good. And we heard again Colin speak at 11 a.m. this morning, for those of you that weren't nursing hangovers or still stuck on the train, about this idea of the universal accessibility and the right of people to have access to those currencies. So now fast forward into 2019 or so, and I joined Wirex, and I'll just talk a little bit about Wirex without trying to bore anyone to tears. I know it's a Saturday and it's sunny, and there's a high probability some of you might fall asleep soon, although I think only 1 or 2 beers have been drunk, so it's probably a good time to talk right now. But Wirex is effectively started as a payment app, but we now have 2 products, but it started initially as a payment app. And the innovation idea was, there are many digital currencies out there, and the biggest problem is getting from one universe to the other. So going from the fiat currency universe, those regulated government-based currencies such as GBP, Euro, dollars, whatever they might be, you can take them and then you could put them into the crypto world. You could buy Bitcoin, Ethereum, Nano, whatever it might be. But then when you wanted to actually make a transaction, the fees were still really high. So you can see that there's that paradox element there, that the whole premise of electric digital currencies was the idea that the fees could be low to non-existent. But actually, in reality, that wasn't the case, because when you actually wanted to convert and spend, actually make something tangible from those currencies, it wasn't possible to do so without paying significant fees. So almost like the World Remit idea, but then going into the cryptocurrency sphere, this is how Wirex was born. And we were the first ever crypto-linked debit card. And so the premise was, you could load up your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, your Nano, Litecoin, whatever currency you might have. Nowadays, I think that we've got close to 50 currencies available, including Avalanche blockchains and others, Cardano, ADA, and many, many more. And you can basically link those to your Wirex payment card, and then you can just go and spend that money as if it's any fiat cash, and it can be drawn down automatically using over-the-counter rates, which would then take out from your balance of Nano or whichever currency it might be. So that's the premise. And what we've done most recently is we've started to innovate and launch a second product, which is a non-custodial wallet. And I thought, I guess a lot of the people here, you guys have a very high level of knowledge of digital currencies. But I'll just, in case there's some people that don't understand that difference between custodial financial product and a non-custodial. So custodial product in Wirex means that you can get one of these bad boys, a Wirex card. I'm showing you this way so you don't see my number and start spending on my behalf. I know some Nano people are like that, because George did it to me one time we went out drinking, but that's another story we won't go into for at least 3 or 4 more hours. But the premise of this is you have to go through KYC, right? So to get a payment card, we have fiat currency partners. In Europe and the UK, we have MasterCard. And in North America and Asia, we've got Visa. So that means that we are regulated. We have an e-money license in the UK. We have an application with the MAS in Singapore. And in America, through our partner in Sutton Bank, we're also regulated there. So what that means is we have to, for anti-money laundering reasons, make sure that we know our customers. So that's why you have to show your passport, driving license, etc., go through, then you can order a card. If you have that card, then you could link your Nano to it, and then you can just go and spend using a Wirex card, buying whatever you want with it during that time. The non-custodial wallet, we launched that one early this year, and there's a couple of reasons why we did it. So the non-custodial wallet, you don't need any KYC because you hold the currencies that you have. At the moment, Nano isn't on the non-custodial wallet, but there are many currencies that are, and we're continually building it out. It's still at the early stages of development. I think it's with a basket of currencies. The big digital assets are there, but we're still adding many more as time goes by. Now, the benefit of the non-custodial wallet is you own your crypto. They're completely yours. You have all the access to it. We're not holding it on your behalf. But of course, the current barrier to that is you then have to convert it still if you want to take it out. So you can then transfer it out to, for example, the Wirex app. Why would some people want to do that? Well, some people just want to hold and own their own assets. They don't want to use any kind of institution or organization. Another reason is maybe depending on the territory you're in, Wirex has a regulated entity, Wirex app, and you cannot use that. You cannot download and ask for a card if you live in, let's say, Brazil or Colombia or various most African countries. It wouldn't be possible either. With the Wirex app, you can't do it, but with the Wirex wallet, you could download anywhere and then access those features and facilities. So that's why we've ended up with two. Initially, that wasn't the plan. Initially, the plan was that we would have one product that would become an ecosystem that you kind of turn on and off the functionalities depending on where you lived. So it could be that we wouldn't let certain features available in some markets, but you would in other. The reason why we ended up having to launch two was mostly for two reasons. One was market trends, the launch of DeFi, and the fact that DeFi protocols, DeFi apps became so hotly desired by people, and actually using a decentralized wallet is the best way to enter those opportunities, those different protocols, those earning mechanisms, and so on. And the second reason is regulation. The regulators have taken an increasingly tough line against crypto-friendly products, because I would argue that Wirex isn't a pure crypto play. We're crypto-friendly in the sense that the app, you could happily use it like you could use a Revolut card or a Monzo card or a Starling card. You never have to actually buy crypto to want to necessarily take advantage of all the cash benefits. You can withdraw money, you can do FX-free transactions in fiat overseas, but the crypto linkage to that means that we're also regulated and we have the e-money license. If you have an e-money license, for example, in the UK, you have to make sure that you have certain standards that they approve of, such as a certain number of people doing anti-money laundering, verification of customers, understanding source of funds, and so on. So that's why we do what we do. And in terms of going forward, the next steps, I think it's always really interesting to come to smaller events like this where you have a small group of really passionate and interested, engaged people talking about how that community can widen. And one of my observations is, as George was saying earlier, the Nano community is one of our closest partners. We do a lot of co-promotions with these guys, talking about lots of similar things at different events. We've done Women in Crypto together and other areas where George has played a significant part. And one of the reasons we've often done that is we really very much strongly believe that the idea of Nano is driving from the bottom up rather than the top down. It's about trying to get more people to believe in the opportunity, and actually it becomes greater by participation. And I think that's a really nice way to look at it, and that's why we're always really delighted to work with the guys at Nano as well. So that's a little bit of an overview about Wirex app, about Wirex wallet, about why remittances and taking away some of those negative fees I think are so important. It's not just about cryptocurrencies. It could be about any migrants who are trying to send money back to loved ones, and I think there's huge business case opportunity for Nano as well. So yeah, I'm just really happy to be here today, and huge thanks to the Nano guys for giving us at Wirex a chance to be part of the day with them as well, and thanks to all of you. We have a significant number of people in our company who are from the Kiev office originally, so we're really proud to have a significant percentage of our workforce, especially the tech team, the back-end developers and so on, who were based in Kiev prior to the war occurring. Many of those people had to flee, so they were still in Kiev when the war broke out. And we've now had to open offices in Wrocław and also in Vilnius, so in Poland and in Lithuania, to allow those guys to still work. But there are many that are spread all around Europe, even some in North America and beyond. And it's really important for us as a business to recognize, firstly, that those are human beings, they're our colleagues, they're our friends, they're hurting, and we need to support them. And I think Wirex has done a great job to create new offices and to allow all of those people to keep working despite incredibly challenging situations. But looking externally, what we've also done is on the 24th of each month, which is the day that Russia began its illegal invasion of Ukraine, we use all of the net revenue from any transactions made in that day, so any of the kind of profitable revenue that we would take from transactions on the 24th, and we donate that to different charities in Ukraine. And you may have heard the story as I just kicked off about Ismail and being fired from the UN for corruption. We believe that in Ukraine, the best way to help Ukrainians is engaging with our local team there, and they recommend micro charities that we transfer money in crypto. So what we do is we actually have a list of small charities that are doing very tangible, specific things. It could be that they are helping children in a particular area, for example, of Ukraine, or it could be that they're helping with retraining women or buying medical equipment for Ukrainians because the hospitals are not functioning. Each month we choose a different charity and we make a one-off blockchain payment to them in a digital currency of their choice. It can be Nano, can be Ethereum, Bitcoin, whatever it is that they choose. So we let the organization choose. We obviously do a bit of KYC, but because we have a Ukrainian team, that's a relatively easy thing for us to do. And we're really committed to doing that and supporting the Ukrainians in their time of need. I would say it's become harder and harder. If you go back to the white paper that was before I joined Wirex in 2019, the initial plan at that time was to aggressively grow and be available in pretty much all markets issuing a card. So the idea was that theoretically we would be borderless, and obviously that would depend on our partners, but we would be able to start opening across all of the developing world with the Wirex app. And then it could be that we just would turn off some of those functionalities when and where it was just not possible for logistics reasons. For example, let's say, I had this problem when I was at World Remit as well. If you're in the Democratic Republic of Congo and you need to do cash pickup, that was really, really difficult. But also if you have a digital product but you want to send them a card, well, good luck finding an address and then actually finding someone that will deliver to that address. So there's a lot of unforeseen challenges. We have experienced in a country like Philippines or Thailand, we can actually issue a card, but we have a really negative funnel there, but we still do it. But it's very, very difficult. So from a logistics basis, what we're often looking at, well, I guess first from a regulatory perspective, do we have permission by our partners or our regulators to be there? If the answer is no, then we don't do that. Second question is, can we actually logistically service that customer and also identify that customer? So does the country have documents that are readable, things like this? They're really boring practical things, but if they don't, then that's a challenge for us. And then can we actually, for example, issue a card to them or be able to manage their funds, because we're custodial from the app side. So these are, I'd say, the biggest single hurdles when I talk about a Wirex perspective, and one of the reasons why we launched the Wirex wallet, because the wallet is non-custodial. You can be anywhere in the world and you can download and use that. But it does mean that I would say the most recent white paper that we launched, we started to move away from the expansion of the Wirex app and card globally, simply because the attitude and the regulatory climate has changed exponentially over the last 18 months or so. So it's always a very cheap shot, I think, for people to always blame Brexit, and it would be easy to blame everything on Brexit. And I won't do that, but what I would say is what happened kind of at a similar time is you had a situation where the FCA retook on regulatory jurisdiction for things they didn't before, and their interpretation has been quite strict. But they're not the only entity that's done that. We're now seeing the European Central Bank doing something very similar. The Fed doing something very similar as well, the SEC, doing similar things as well. So a consequence of that means that we've actually had to change a lot of our growth models. And that's why I think you can see not just Wirex, but many crypto digital currencies, they've started to go into dApps and different DeFi protocols, because the route to this kind of hybrid custodial finance and linking in fiat currencies has become ever more expensive. For us to service customers in fiat currencies, we have to spend a fortune on KYC, anti-money laundering. Sorry, it's a Saturday. I am still sober, and all of these things. So that's why. And then going to your final question about Nano, I would say, and I think it was captured quite nicely by Colin before, that maybe the awareness is easier to build in the developed countries, such as in the US or in the UK, but the potential business case and the problem it solves is far, far greater in the developing world. And having been to places like Ghana myself to see how it works with World Remit, if you can get that last stage of logistics right. So at World Remit, they did. It wasn't an overnight process. It took years to actually get local payout partners, because at some point, someone wants Ghanaian cedi, and at some point, they need to be able to have cedi. And this, I think, is the challenge for any digital asset, is how can you still have that exchangeability for people that need it, or be able to spend that money in the same way when they get to those local countries. We normally don't give out information like most fintechs on the active user base globally, just because that's kind of confidential. And if I told you, I'd have to kill you. And you look physically about 23% stronger than me. So, and you're sober, so probably won't start down that track right now, but maybe later. But I'm not here to start a fight with you. Sorry. Let's go back to your question. It was about how many customers. When I started at Wirex in 2020, we had 3.5 million registered customers. We now have 5 million registered customers worldwide. That's of the Wirex app and card. Now, obviously, this is, if I'm being candid with you, that's a vanity metric that all fintechs use, because it doesn't factor in churned customers, inactive customers, and so on. But the fact that in the 2.5 years I've been here, we added 1.5 million tells you that there's those are actual customers that have come through the pipeline during that time as well. We started off, when I joined in late 2019, we were basically a UK and some markets in EU business. We had like this many customers in APAC. Since then, we have the APAC region is now 1/3 of our business. And that's why we've got a small team based in Singapore, and also in Malaysia, we're starting to employ people as well. Our head of marketing is based in New Zealand. We've got 2 marketeers in Singapore. And in North America, we launched in February, so in the USA. And that's still relatively small because we've just launched it, and we launched it during the crypto winter, but that's something that we're hoping to grow out significantly during the next 2 years. So our vision would be that, let's say by the end of next year, potentially North America, Europe, and APAC would be almost the same size as each other. That's kind of the plan for us. When I joined Wirex in 2019, I was told by the CEO, you need to be ready because we're launching USA next month. And it was like January 2020. We launched in March 2022. So you can tell it takes a really, really, really long time to actually go there. And that's basically because it's a very, very heavily regulated market. The USA is not one country when it comes to financial products and services. It's 50. So you have to actually get licenses, or you have to have a partner that enables you to access all of those territories. When I say territories, states basically within the US. So we're available in every state with the exception of New York. New York, it was the same thing when I worked at World Remit. We were available everywhere with the exception of New York. It's got exceptionally high standards of entry in terms of approval processes. Each state has got their own veto, so you have to get local permissions. We have a partner called Sutton Bank, and we use Sutton Bank as our partner that underwrites us through their license with Visa as well. And that allows us to basically solicit and attract any customers in any state with the exception of New York, which, as you said, is incredibly difficult. With the regulated app and card, I think that South America is going to be, it's a huge opportunity. And in our initial white paper from 2019 was something that was a big part of our growth plans. The cost of entry based on ensuring that we can get through the regulators, and also because it's not just when you enter a market, let's say like Mexico or somewhere like that, if you've got the app and card, you have to have a certain infrastructure there in terms of people that are nationals from that country, that have the right level of AML, for example, qualifications, KYC, whole infrastructure. I think Brazil is one of the worst countries in the world in terms of doing business, on the cost of doing business indexes. When you can, open source, you can see that corruption levels are high as well. So to be able to go into those markets with a regulated product, it's incredibly expensive. We would love to do it, but I think it's going to be, I don't know when that might happen, basically. I think it's going to be so far ahead, it's not even on the roadmap.